Hey, listeners, welcome back to another episode of No Earthly Explanation. This is Brittany and my wonderful co host, partner in crime, and everything all above. Don Schmidt is with me again. And we're
Hi,
here to
Brit.
talk about some interesting topics. Hi, Don. How have you been, first of all, before we get into all this
Long
hot mess?
time, long time no see, but no, we've been very busy, especially as far as book promotion with the
Yeah.
75th anniversary of Roswell, and I'll be heading back down to Roswell just in a couple of weeks, finishing up some display work, doing some lecture work at the International UFO Museum and Research Center, which we invite everyone listening to come and see us, come and visit. We're talking about one of the top 10, as it's been rated, tourist attractions in the United States on a number of um, polls that have been taken throughout the years. So we're proud of those honors, and especially with the big anniversary this year, that we're pulling out all the stops leading up to the festival and beyond, because for what we're going to be discussing shortly, it all couldn't be more timely, because this is very much in the news, very
Yep.
much as far as a conversation piece at the water coolers now on a daily basis.
Yep.
And we're going to get into what is behind the scenes, is going on, what do we anticipate, what do we predict is going to happen, and are we on the brink of disclosure after 75 years? Is it finally going to happen? Well, ladies and gentlemen, don't hold your breath, but we'll be getting into that very shortly.
I agree. It is everywhere right now. And I'm sure for those of you listening, the topic at hand is basically the congressional hearings that are going to be happening. And basically, what is it, in 2 days, I think,
Two
correct?
days.
2 days, Tuesday. And it's fascinating to me because it's going to open up. And I know a lot of people have been posting online about it. I know I've gotten some questions, Don. I am sure that you have gotten bombarded with questions. And as I have said to several of the people that have sent me information, and I've seen that Joe Rogan also posted something, and I know people are really talking about it. And again, I understand, I hear you. I know that it has been years, especially since Blue Book closed up, that any type of information or any kind of real investigation ever going into this has happened, and it's kind of closed up shop. And I am aware, I know, I hear you, but I am not holding my breath. I'm just not. And I
Oh,
know
good.
that
I don't want to see you turn blue. So
you would have a host more
I'm
with you, Don.
1,000 miles
You're a
away, so I
co-host.
couldn't
Dead.
exactly, resuscitate you if that be the case.
I know. Yeah, I'd be gone. I would be gone. That's all right. You know how to, deal with paranormal investigations. So I just come back to you as a ghost. It wouldn't be a big deal.
That's
But
you,
I just haunt you
and
for
you
fun.
better. I would expect that you would. So
Yeah, of course. I would just move things for fun to irritate you. You'd be like, I know I left my keys here. Um, no,
you
but
hope,
so let's
you
get
hope
in.
that that's what intelligence agents have often done with people that they would be stalking, spying on, where they would break into their homes, into their apartments, unbeknownst to them, and to drive them crazy, to get them to slowly break. They would get into their places of residence, and each day slowly, very incrementally move their furniture to the point that all of a sudden a chair that was at a 90-degree angle was now at a 30, and so on. And to the point that
Mm.
the owner would come home and become more and more paranoid, or start doubting their very faculties, their senses, as to their own comfortable environment. So, these people have been playing these games for years. So you pull that on me, I'll still know it's you.
I know. Well, they've been preparing you. And so that when I cross over,
Yeah.
I'll make it
Yeah.
even more fun for you.
They wouldn't dare come into my house. So.
No, they would not. You're absolutely right. I know you. You're too like old school gunslinger for that stuff. You're just,
Actually, I'm not.
I don't
I'm
mean
that
like an, I don't
But I'm
mean
that
that kind of
confident of
gunslinger.
what I know and what I can do, and I don't like to lose. And
Yeah, you're
so
right.
when we had a press conference when our first book came out on Roswell in 1991, and we had a room full of reporters. We were told that everyone that we had well over 50 reporters in the room. And we had a prepared statement knowing that they were going to ask, now, what if they come knocking? What if you have the feds actually come, to scare you off? And our response was, well, they have our addresses. And secondly, they better be their best because that's what it's going to take. So we were right in their faces. And I think that's another reason it's like, whoa, we got to watch these guys. They're not taking this lightly. And I still don't.
Well, of course not.
So to get back on topic, to make sure that it's not 5 minutes before the end of the program, and it's like, oops, that's right. We got to talk about the current situation on Capitol Hill.
Well, okay. So the couple of things I did want to take note of. So we've had video leaks, as I like to put in quotation. And I almost feel like, and this is my opinion, I feel like these leaks happen to test the general public to see if the general public's interest or topics, are they going to freak out, or is there a natural interest because, oh, people are actually seeing the same things. So we know of the 2004, we know of the 2014 or 15 video, and then we have all these videos that come out to play. And for the longest time, everybody was talking about, we need to have these congressional hearings. We need to bring this to, basically to the public to see, that it's not just happening by what we're seeing, because unfortunately I feel as though when the general public says they're seeing something, it's disregarded. The moment a United States Air Force comes forward or somebody of active duty comes forward and says, nope, I saw it myself. And there's multiple, voices that come forward with him that were working the same airspace or whatever the case, or even the Navy who have multiple videos. When they all come forward, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, hold on. Shh, quiet. Okay. What are you talking about? You saw something, now everybody wants to know, but it's been going on in the general public for gosh darn, how long? Right. And now it's like all of a sudden now we want to talk about it because all these videos now are supposedly leaked.
Let's set this up to demonstrate to the audience that this is nothing new, that this has happened before, and all the more reason to be especially doubtful of the agenda and what the end game is. It was after the Dexter Ann Arbor sightings in Michigan in 1966. And at that time, the Air Force's Project Blue Book was in its final throes, but nonetheless, they immediately sent up my former scientific director, but their scientific consultant, the late Dr. J.L.N. Hynek, up from Evanston, Illinois, to investigate this personally. And many of his interviews were screened. They were not publicly released, but the ones that they felt would be the easiest to explain, such as the farmer's description of a glowing orb over a marsh, where he then came up with the explanation of swamp gas, which he never wrote down. And then Congressman Gerald Ford, the former president, who took over after Richard Nixon resigned in scandal. Ford went public and he just expressed his frustration that the military wasn't taking this seriously, and he made a promise to his constituents that he was going to push for congressional hearings. So there was an attempt. And at that time, representing the United States scientific community was the late Dr. James McDonald of the University of Arizona, famous astrophysicist, a champion of UFO researchers for many decades. And I will never forget when he was called on to finally testify before this congressional panel. And the late Senator Ted Kennedy brought up the fact that Dr. McDonald was in favor of the supersonic, the Concorde, as far as the supersonic, as far as a passenger jet plane.
Mm-hmm.
And that because of that, he should be discredited, because there's no way that a commercial plane is ever going to fly beyond the speed of sound.
Right.
Okay, over 750 miles an hour, that type of thing. Well,
right.
Kennedy was wrong. McDonald was correct. But nonetheless, they were already steering all attention away from the topic at hand. What's interesting, Brett, is that when Dr. Hynek was introduced, representing the Air Force, who should introduce him but his own local congressman at that time, the late Donald Rumsfeld, who would go on to become Secretary of Defense under Gerald Ford, the Ford administration, and then years later under the George W. Bush administration. So I'm talking Donald Rumsfeld. And Rumsfeld introduced Hynek in glowing terms. Nonetheless, it never got off the ground. It was something that, well, at least we didn't try, that we at least kept our word. And it'd be a few years later, when Rumsfeld was Secretary of Defense under Ford, and Hynek just happened to be in Washington. Blue Book had shut down at the end part of 1969. They washed their hands of the entire situation. Nothing to see here. They had investigated over 13,000 cases, 701 that remained unexplained. So much for, having a 100% success record. And Hynek sets up an appointment to meet with his former representative, now Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. And he's sitting in his office in Washington. And he reminds the secretary that I provided you almost 20 years of scientific consult and gave me nothing. I feel that I deserve the truth. I feel I deserve to be told something. And Hynek would tell us that Rumsfeld got up from behind his desk and very hoitily walked in front of Hynek. And with his finger in Hynek's face, he went, "You have no need to know." Wow. So there's a there. Rumsfeld was acknowledging it, but you don't have any right to know that. Even though you were our chief scientific consultant for 20 years, even though I introduced you in the highest of qualifications back 5 years earlier during the attempt of congressional hearings. And so they play this song and dance. And it's not so much even with the media as much as it's with the general public.
Yeah.
And what you're going to see on this Tuesday, first of all, they have two representatives from the Pentagon. They will be two know-nothings. They will know absolutely nothing about the subject. And the reason the military does that, so they can't slip. They can't make a mistake. They can't perjure themselves as long as they either plead the fifth, or that's national security, or I don't have that answer. I will get it for you. They're telling the truth.
Right.
And as of this afternoon, we learned that one of them is going to represent the Navy, and he specializes in Chinese intelligence. So already we see where they're going.
Wow.
That they're looking for a very earthly explanation. And all they're going to need is this intelligence officer from the Navy to say, well, the Chinese have been able to replicate this technology, and they've done this with drones, and they have come close to being able to duplicate our efforts in this arena. And who's to say, maybe we're not on top of it as well as we would like, and maybe they have something that looks like the Tic Tac. Maybe they have something that looks like it defies the laws of physics as we know it. But maybe we don't have all the data we need. So what we're going to propose to the members of Congress, that we need more money. We need a special panel to now investigate the Chinese. Let's see if they actually have something. And this could be drawn out for years. And once again, the press will go, sounds good to me.
Right.
Anything but extraterrestrial. And the congressmen, unless they are truly curious, unless they have done some homework and they realize that, wait a minute, you're only addressing the phenomena since 2004. When the Pentagon report went to Congress in June of last year, they only acknowledged the subject from 2004.
Right.
They didn't go back 75 years. They didn't go back to them. So it wasn't a threat back then. And the point is we both know the subject, the caseload is extremely rich, dating back to the 40s. It was it was the precursor of what got the government involved to begin with. And if you remember, we discussed this in an earlier program, that the reason that they created such a tight window is that they could fall back on something of earthly technology, Russian, Chinese.
Something.
And they already have played. And I'm not surprised. I've been predicting it now for almost 5 years. Because I'm also asking the question, why now? Why now?
That is the question. Why now?
Right. We haven't had an incident involving, the military where a jet was scrambled and there was a mishap. Somebody was killed in pursuit of a UAP, an unidentified aerial phenomenon, that type of thing. So it's like just out of nowhere that the Navy decides, well, we've been maintaining this cover up for 70 years, and we just thought we finally would fess up. We finally would be transparent. You people weren't mature enough to handle it after all this time. And as though these were the first pilot sightings, I'm going to let you, obviously, I've been hoarding the microphone, but I wanted to set up the history for having been involved, especially Dr. Heining. But then we're going to get into why the current situation with the Navy is hardly news. It's hardly, anything earth-shaking, because it also goes back 75 years. Please, you're insulting our intelligence by suggesting, oh, this is a recent phenomenon, and it's only involved the Navy. And who's strangely absent in all this? The Air Force.
Oh, yeah.
They zip their mouth shut. The very arbiters of the cover-up. No, I don't see the press, knocking on their door. Well, what can you say about this, given that you're the ones who are sitting on all the data?
And footage, and good footage. For instance, look at let's go back to Ryan Graves' footage and what they saw and witnessed, and he came out in 2015 talking about that encounter. And it wasn't just him, it was multiple other pilots with him. And we're talking a very fast jet that he was, basically they were going rather slow in these jets at the time, but this thing was like a fleet that they were there was 4 or 5 objects that they were following and monitoring. And the thing that he just couldn't, he couldn't even grasp. And when you stop and you think about it, as he kept talking about, we're talking that these things are going at extraordinary, the capabilities are out of this world, because what they knew, they never had any kind of technology like this. And even from foreign, they have never heard or seen anything like this before. And it was hard to track. And these are United States Air Force. We've got United States Air Force. We have Navy, talking about these UAPs, as they like to now call them, from UFOs. No matter how you want to cover it, color it, name it, whatever you want to do to it, we are still having a major phenomenon that has been around, like you said, from before the 40s, that took a very huge eyebrow interest all of a sudden. That why I can't understand why now it's like, yeah, United States Air Force, keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything more. Look at, I almost feel like it's almost like, look what you did. Look what you started. Like now you've opened up the can and now we have to kind of come forward. And the truth is, guys, we don't really know what it is. We just want to point fingers at everybody else because we still don't know. 75 years later, we still don't know.
See, they're also asking the wrong people. They need to have the CEOs like Ben Rich. They need to have people that represent Boeing and Lockheed.
Yep.
Hughes Aircraft when it was still in business. Rand Corporation, Battelle Institute. Places that have been identified for attempting to reverse engineer technology that may be off the planet. They need to be, questioning Robert Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly who the late Senator Harry Reid of Nevada was pointing to. Luis Elizondo, the former head of ATIP with the Pentagon, has continually pointed to Bigelow, as well as Dr. Hal Puthoff and Christopher Mellon and all these others. Bigelow Aerospace, they have an entire building that is housing technology that may be from off the planet. And who do they go to? Again, the very arbiters of the cover-up.
You're right.
Because they want to make sure they're all on the same page. Now, we will recall that Harry Reid, before he died, Senator Reid, when he was interviewed again by the New York Times just last year, and the very topic, the very question of hardware, of physical evidence of an alien technology has ever been recovered. And Reid, in the original article, in the original interview, stated that it was his information that Lockheed had actually conducted attempts at reverse engineering of such hardware. Well, the next day, Reid tried to retract. He tried to reel that back by claiming he never said that. Well, they have him on tape saying it. So did he have a change of heart, or did somebody call him and go, wait a minute, Senator, we can't admit that. We can't acknowledge that because then we're providing them with a source. We're actually fingering a potential target. We can't go there.
Right.
And so that also demonstrates that they have no intention of getting to the bottom of this.
So let me ask you though. So if, we have come a little bit more into the understanding that there is a possibility that we are being visited by possibly a more advanced type of race with amazing technology. Okay. That possibility is out there. It's lingering. It's talked about all over social media. Why is there still, it's so much different than it was even in the 60s, even today. I mean, hell, when we were in the 60s, let's be honest, 69, we were making extraordinary leaps and bounds for us going out of our own atmosphere into another domain and onto another planet. Okay. So at that point, even we were changing mentally of understanding if we can do it, maybe somebody else has done it. Maybe somebody else is more advanced than us. Are we alone in this? Maybe not. We went through the space race. Look at us now. Look how much more advanced we are. So why not actually why the cover-ups? Why continue to over and over again, just give us a cracker? I don't want a cracker anymore. We're not stupid. We know the truth and we know that they don't know a whole lot, but why continue to cover it up? Why can't they just come out and say, hey, we don't know. Let's all look into this together. And the public, if you can help, that'd be great. But they won't.
No, because with the government / military, it's all a matter of control. If they would ever have to concede that there are devices, there are aerial objects that are able to fly through our airspace with total impunity, and we can't do anything about it, why would we ever trust our elected officials? Why would he ever trust, the military again? How are they defending us in that regard?
Yeah.
By then covering it up, by not acknowledging it, by poo-pooing it, by making every effort to discredit the witnesses, and allowing them elbow room to investigate this. And after now 75 years, as you know, I remain convinced that it is still a cover-up of ignorance, that they still have no answers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They don't know from where, they don't know from who, they don't know from why. And as a result, there is nothing to disclose. They can acknowledge the phenomena, which is what they pretty much they did almost a year ago, that
Mm-hmm.
there is something else there. There's an other. In other words, there's another explanation, and they referred to it as other.
Right.
But by leaving it that vague, they can slowly shift it into the terrestrial. Project Blue Book, in the closing gasps of its very investigative nature, all the cases, for example, that they had listed as possible and probable, they took out all those pronouns and they became weather balloon. They became birds. That's how they do that. And it's constantly, getting you to look in one direction while they're doing something in the opposite. It's the old, as I always say, the old shell game. And the other thing, Brit, is the culpability. All the people that they smeared, all the people that they threatened, including their own for decades. And just imagine all the families, should they step forward and the right attorneys would call on them for a class action suit. And and many would say, well, statute of limitations, 7 years, it's beyond that. No. We're talking up till today that people have been harassed, they have been intimidated, they have been threatened. And then the fact that the families were told from many at the beginning that should they ever talk about this in public, that they would face physical retaliation. And so they can't risk that either, because then it would be out of their control. Then they would wind up in a courtroom and they would have to explain, for example, with Roswell. Now, how is it that you threatened to kill a witness's children over a weather balloon device? How is that even conceivable?
Yep.
And we know it's not. We know it's not. And again, they will not go there. They're going to do everything they can to make sure that they will not be held responsible. And that's another reason the Air Force is standing on the sidelines right now. Let the Navy speak for, all of us. Let the Navy, come up with an explanation on this. And we're either going to step forward then and say, well, we knew it all along. We knew it was, the Chinese, we knew it was the Russian. So you didn't need us to tell you that. But to think that the Air Force is going to step forward and say, well, we've known since 1947, and that we've been deceiving the American people. We've been deceiving presidents, senators, congressmen for all these years. But you have to understand, that's what we do. We deceive. We distort. We misinform. Well, they don't want that reputation either, because then they'll never be trusted again. And they still have to rely on us vis-a-vis Congress to appropriate their yearly budgets. And then we just as soon tell them, fine, you're not getting another dime from us because you can't be held, you're not responsible enough to even, tell us the truth.
Yeah. Well, then it becomes like, well, I guess when it becomes War of the Worlds or the day the earth stood still, then they have to come forward and talk to us. You know what I mean? But it just baffles me, because you're right. I mean, you're 100% correct on how they're handling and why they're handling it. And it's just frustrating for me. And I'm sure it's as frustrating as it is for you, because it's like when you know, and you just want them to come forward and talk about it, and they won't. And they, you know, the media jumps on this whole big roller coaster, and they get all these people really excited, just like when the big disclosure came out in, you know, in June and at last June, and everyone's all pumped and everybody wanted to do this whole big media special. And it was like, hey, guess what? It's full of nothing. Had nothing to share with you this time either, you know? And it's like, they give you a couple little cool things. And in those cool things, you're like, huh, I feel like they gave me a little something. But then as you go through every single page, even this last one that was 1,500 plus pages long, you're left going, it all sounds amazing. It sounds like the real life X-Files, but guess what, folks? It's still a fluff. There's still nothing to show from it but fluff. So thank you for this magical fluff. That's not going to give me anything. You know, I have more luck going out at night and seeing a UFO by myself and taking notes for myself. And I feel bad for, I'm going to be honest, I feel bad for a lot of the United States Air Force men that have come forward, for some of the Navy men who have come forward, for some of the generals who have come forward in the past, and all of these people who have come forward because they just couldn't bear to keep this to themselves anymore, to keep it hidden anymore. I saw this. I was a part of this. I witnessed this. This is what they threatened me if I said this because of what I saw. See, and then all of a sudden, like, these people are just tormented. And, you know, the things that are, oh, they're coming after me, Don. I'm talking too much. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. But, you know, I feel bad for them and their families because of the ridicule and the constant, you know, that they didn't see what they saw, and the constant put downs, or, you know, you're just not going to work in doing this anymore, and don't come forward. And it goes on and on and on. And it's extreme in some cases. And in some others, not so much. Some others just say it and then they vanish, and it got it off their chest. But I feel bad for them because you can tell when they talk about their testimony in their face, it's real. This happened to them. This was, you know, this was their life. This is what they witnessed. They were good to, you know, the United States. They were good people, and they had no reason to make something like this up. And then when the footage comes out, they feel so justified, you know, to be like, there it is. Oh, thank God it came out, you know, like, I've been telling you this forever. Here it is. Finally, everyone can see it. And it doesn't do them any justice. And for me, I feel so sad, and I feel horrible for these gentlemen, because you can tell it's wreaked havoc on them emotionally, mentally, and for their families. And this has been happening since the 40s. You know this. We talk about this quite often, Don. And so my heart pours out to them, because they deserve this justice just as much as the people wanting to know the truth, just as much as those investigating the truth, like you and myself. That justice, they want that justice, but unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to get it, at least not right now.
The very concept that a handful of men have decided for all time that this is something so big, so monumental, that the world can never know the truth.
Right.
And the fact that you have novices, you have people that know next to nothing about this subject, conducting this congressional inquiry into a subject that the media knows absolutely nothing about as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the military will provide a number of ringers who, again, most likely also will know next to nothing about this subject, so they won't slip. They have nothing to provide. They're going to essentially plead their ignorance, and if we don't know anything about it, it's because there's nothing there. There's nothing to see.
Right.
And so everybody's going to come away going, "Phew, thank God there's nothing there." But as we both know, it would be as simple as, you know, last time that President Bill Clinton was on the Jimmy Kimmel show, and he talked about Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
How often Roswell, you know, rises to the fore.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the one case that solved this overnight. And here is Bill Clinton talking about how I had 8 years in the Oval Office and I couldn't get the truth about Roswell. And he talked about how He had Webster Hubbell, who was with the State Department at that time. Now, I want you to just look into two things for me. I want you to find out who assassinated John F. Kennedy and what's the truth about UFOs. And he came up empty-handed. And Clinton then goes on to say, I demanded to see the documents from Roswell. Well, there's a problem with that. And I don't know if anybody have picked up on it, even including our colleagues. They didn't pick up on the fact, if I'm the president of the United States, why would I only want to see documents? It'd be like, damn it, I want to see the bodies. I want to see the wreckage. And I'm the president. And I'm giving you an executive order. You are going to take me, whether it's Area 51 or Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. If you have them buried someplace, that is what I am going to see.
Right,
so
exactly.
The president was very careful that he would not suggest for a moment that there was something in our possession as far as the actual physical proof. And so we talk about photographs, for example. We know back in 1947 at Roswell, they photographed every second of that recovery operation, that retrieval situation. The photographers, I can tell you exactly who their names were. We talked to one of them firsthand, and he described how they were taken out with a bus and the windows were all covered up and they were out in the middle of the desert. They were taken to a tent and he was handed a 35 millimeter camera. They pulled back a tarp and there were two of these non-human bodies. And he was told, just take the pictures, don't ask a question, don't say a word, and end of story. And then he shipped out to Alaska thereafter, and he's kept essentially incognito for the next 5 years. Okay, made sense because that's what they did back then. But the point being, there literally have to be hundreds of thousands of pictures just documenting this, aside from the actual hardware, the physical evidence that you could go outside and kick the tires on the car across the street.
Right.
And you have president, I want to see the documents. And that's how Congress is going to, well, we'd like to see the documents. We don't want to see the real thing. We don't want you to bring in pieces of the Roswell craft, the memory material, the I-beams, the type of wreckage that defies conventional explanation. No, we want to see the documents. And then the fallback there is, well, documents can be forged. They can be fake. They can be cut and paste stuff, because a document is only worth as much as what the information is. And you still need to have the proof as far as the information, as far as it's borne out that created that very document. So again, I'm sorry for being such a cynic, but I have dealt with these people too long. The former Congressman James Sensenbrenner, when the MJ-12 documents came out in 1987, and there was all this talk that either we're dealing with a smoking gun, because it was a briefing document in 1951 for then President-elect Dwight Eisenhower, and it spells out the Roswell incident, the Roswell recovery, the craft, the bodies, the wreckage, all that. And it mentions the Majestic 12, MJ-12, the 12 people, military as well as scientists, who want to be part of this oversight committee.
Right.
Investigating, determining what, the nature, what this represented as far as the world back at that time. And as skeptical as we were, and we were proven to be correct, that the documents were complete forgeries, they were fake from the get-go. But nonetheless, I met with Congressman James Sensenbrenner at his office in Washington, and I displayed the documents to him. And I explained that, Congressman, we have a problem here that I need to bring to your attention. We either have someone from inside who is releasing without authority, without declassification, classified documents without permission, or someone is forging classified documents and passing them off as being genuine. we have a class 1 felony in either case. And he's agreeing with me. Oh, yes, Mr. Schmidt. Yes. We need to look into this immediately. We need to get to the bottom of this. And after I had his assurances, I thanked him and I stepped out of his office, but I was smart enough to step back into the doorway as I watched him crumble them up and tossing them into the waste paper basket. And I'm sorry, that has been 99.9% of Capitol Hill's reaction to this subject from day one. Because it's been a career breaker, it's been an election as far as defeat. Senator Dennis Kucinich, when he was running for president on a Democratic ticket, and all in one of the presidential debates, all he did was mention the fact that he had a sighting, and the press had a field day, and that was the end of his campaign. So it was nonsense back then, but today, all of a sudden, it's the genuine article. It's serious because the Navy says so. Sorry. Again, you don't lie to me for 75 years and then say, oh, but this time, no.
Yeah, this time's going to be different. Yeah,
I've cheated on you for 75 times, but this one time,
it's going to be completely different, I swear. Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing I've been feeling too. And I know that the media is grabbing it by the horns and they're dragging this thing out, and I know that I'm going to walk away going, well, that was the most, several hours wasted of my time of things I already knew. You already knew. But it's an interesting thing to think about and to talk about because, in the end, you hope that all these battles, all these fights, and all these confrontations and push to get the real disclosure will happen. And I hope that, for any listener that's listening that has, been in that place with the government and feels that they want to have a safe place to come and talk about their disclosure on the matter or something that you've witnessed, feel free to come here. I know Don and I would welcome you. It's just sad to me because I want to see it. I want to see it all come out. And like you said, I don't want just documents. I want tangible evidence. I want to see the bodies. I do. If we still have them somewhere preserved, which we might, why wouldn't we? And, I want to see the pieces of wreckage. I want to see what they've been working on. And I think it'd be very ignorant of us to think that they don't have that stuff somewhere that they feel, at the ranks and the positions they're in, people beneath them don't need to know about it. You don't need to know about it. You don't need to hear about it. We have it under control. And until that time, we'll let you know. Until then, stay tuned with our little cookie crumbs for you guys to nibble up on and move about your way. I think they see what the numbers and the views and the comments are through the media when they leak and they talk about some of these things. And they say they do these, disclosures. I think that they do see a little bit more where people are coming forward with like, oh, thank God. Yeah. I want to know. I want to see, oh, this is going to be exciting. I wonder what's going to happen, And so it's kind of like, all right, let's see what happens. But I do find it funny. If you notice the trend, they always seem to do these disclosures around something else. Have you ever noticed that? Mm-hmm. Like they let out part of the disclosure during the virus outbreak in 2020. And it was like, wait, hold on. There was a disclosure. And I was like, yeah, you didn't know? No. It was completely underneath what was happening in the world. They just slid it out there underneath the correct. Yeah. And that happened again. And now it's happening again. And I find it really funny. They're doing it on a very important week. And I don't mean to bring it up, but I'll say it. Between the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. Guess what? It's happening the same week. They're coming back into the trial. And now all of a sudden they're doing this big disclosure. Half the world is all on this case with Johnny Depp. And now they're throwing out, well, we're going to do this big disclosure on, Capitol Hill. What major timing again? I notice a trend that you guys are doing. Like, am I wrong? Have you noticed that?
No. And we have to anticipate. You mentioned the Johnny Depp Heard trial and how it had, daily coverage on the cable news networks.
Yep.
We'll wait to see if we have such coverage for a subject, again, that truly does fascinate every, I shouldn't say every, but most men, women, and children
Most
around the
everyone.
world. The idea that we're being visited, that we're being host to, travelers from another planet, that type of thing.
Exactly.
So we know that C-SPAN is going to cover it, but maybe we should get into two. What are we talking about? How is such hearings convened? How are such hearings, often just conducted? It's a case of where you had the Senate Intel Committee that after they received the briefing last June, and again, it was with the proviso that there would be hearings. That was the push, because both the Senate and congressional representatives were lamenting the fact that they were not being briefed on this affair, this situation. And that's when they put it on the docket as to they would appoint a chairperson who would then they would appoint from their respective parties an equal handful of both Democrat and then Republican. And they would, in representing their constituents, they would then be, which is within their very constraints, their very congressional magistration, that they can subpoena witnesses, they can provide immunity for witnesses. They can. There's a specific espionage clause that Congress can absolve people of security oaths, and they can testify behind closed doors, and there can be a determination made as to whether the information can be publicized or not. So Congress has a tremendous amount of power, and especially during hearings of this sort. But the fact that they are that they're only, at least for Tuesday, they've only announced that they're calling 2 representatives from the military. No one else. No witnesses, no whistleblowers, no scientists, nobody who knows anything about this topic. They're going to kind of feel out one another as to, well, where do we go from here? And I would just love the panel to say, now, wait a minute, it's status quo. It's the same old.
Right.
You're not telling us anything we don't already know. We're asking you specific questions, so we are informed, that we become up to speed on this entire situation. And because of that, I know I'll be watching. I know you'll be watching as well.
Of course.
As we both have been maintaining, unless they exercise their full authority, and they do provide immunity for whistleblowers, all these high-ranking officers, many of them retired, these pilots, these radar operators, these ship's captains who have had personal, firsthand encounters with unknowns. Again, someone who can take them by the hand and lead them through the woods after dark. Because I'm sorry, this is only going to be a carnival otherwise. Well, let us tell you what we want you to believe, as opposed to, let me tell you what I tracked on radar traveling at 10,000 miles an hour back in 1968. Let me tell you about our missile firing line that was totally disabled with an object that was hovering, within the perimeter of the base. Let me tell you the time we were scrambled and this object flew circles around what we have. And then finally, let me tell you about the wreckage from 1947 that even defies conventional explanation in 2022.
Exactly.
But if that happens, then we are talking hardball, baseball.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's going to be a continuation of Little League.
Everyone's a
And you're talking about grown people that are willing to still play softball with a subject as potentially threatening national security. as UFO UAPs.
Well, and as we get into the end of the show, Don, what do you think? Well, I mean, I guess, well, for our listeners, what if they've never seen this, heard this, been exposed to it, what should they expect on Tuesday as to what a congressional hearing is for a topic like this? I know we just kind of got into it there at the end, like what you were just saying was a lot of pieces of that, but in short, for some listeners that may not know that, what do we have to look forward to at that time when they do this on Tuesday?
The first thing to look for is those representatives who get the military, the Pentagon officials to squirm, become defensive, actually demonstrate that we're going to throw hardballs at you and you better throw them back.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see how educated, how much homework these representatives have done. If the line of questioning are all in general terms, it's where they expect general responses, which really are nothing.
Yeah.
It really tells you nothing. And so that would be the first thing to watch for. Secondly, if you see these Pentagon officials constantly respond that I do not have that information, Senator, I don't have that information, Representative or Congressman, but let me get that. I will provide that. I will look into that.
Let me get back to you.
And so they are promising that they will have to provide a paper trail. They've never been called on to do that before. The Pentagon has always been able to just brush it aside and say, we found nothing, we performed due diligence, and again, there was nothing that we needed to even look into.
Right.
The moment they start actually conceding that there were many such cases we could not explain, and that's the point. If these cases still remain open, they're in open case files, then the committee needs to say, well, what can we do to help you finalize, or what have you done to further investigate, and have you been able to determine closure on any of these cases? And if so, did they turn out to be of other technology here on planet Earth, or are you still questioning that this may be something other, as you yourself have already defined it? It's other. It's someone else's technology. And so this is going to be a chess match. We don't want to see it become a checker match. And at the moment, the onus is on them, both sides, to demonstrate just how legitimate these hearings will be. And they have much at stake, because those of us in this field are going to be watching them
very
with the
closely,
utmost scrutiny. And we're going to insist that by the manner in which they perform, as we often have said, what they don't say speaks volumes. We'll see if that is the case on Tuesday. We'll see just how willing they are to even play on the same ball field.
Yep. I agree with you. Well, I guess in the end, Don, it's until Tuesday, because I know we'll be watching very, very, very closely and to see how it all turns out. So I hope our listeners also, if you're interested in this topic, please listen in and tune in. Hopefully there'll be some type of airing of it somewhere. I hope we get some airtime on this matter, but we'll see. But, well, Don, I have to say it's been another fantastic time talking with you as always. I love when we can get into these conversations, especially about current topics that pop up on us like this in our field work. I absolutely love it. So with that,
and giving our movie review, so to speak, after Tuesday.
Yes. Yes, I think we should. I think we should definitely circle back to this and talk about basically what happened. I would love to hear from you, especially.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to take my notes. You take yours, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk, because I believe it's going to be a very, very interesting talk. So for our listeners, I want to thank you again so much for coming to take a listen to our show and to hear Don and I go back and forth on this amazing topic at hand with the wonderful non-disclosure, just kidding, coming out on Tuesday. So until next time, please come visit us on our official website at anchor.fm/no earthly explanation. If you have any comments or questions in regard to this particular congressional hearing that is coming up, or if you have any other questions for Don and myself, you can feel free to email us over at noearthlyexplanation@gmail.com. You can listen to us anywhere that you prefer. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Breaker. Gosh, the list goes on and on. You can follow us on Facebook at /No Earthly Explanation, or on Instagram at No Earthly Explanation. That is our handles for those. You can also follow both myself and Don, this amazing duo, if you would like, on Instagram or Facebook. Mine is /Brit Barbieri Official on Facebook. Instagram is Brit Investigates. And then you can also find Donald Raymond Schmidt on Facebook, or on Instagram at Don47Tom. And again, it's been a wonderful time talking. We will be circling back absolutely after Tuesday. And until then, Don, I'm just going to ask, what do you have planned?
To get in trouble, stay in trouble, because it makes things happen. So we're going to be watching. It's Tuesday, so you better work up to our expectations. You've been warned.
Exactly. Exactly. You've been warned. Until next time, everyone, thank you for listening.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fisher and distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure to visit the official website for the International Association of Metatomics at metatomics.org, or find us on social media for other unique content.